UK Islamic school caught illegally segregating boys and girls. The Abu Bakr Al-Ihsaan Academy, an independent Islamic school in Walsall, United Kingdom, has come under scrutiny for continuing to unlawfully segregate boys and girls despite warnings from Ofsted, which is like the regulatory oversight body. The school, registered as a co ed from ages 4 to 16, was found to be operating a separate provision for girls 11 to 16, which Ofsted deemed as, quote, unlawful discrimination and detrimental to both boys and girls. This practice violates a 2017 landmark ruling that declared segregation within the same school unlawful. The school's failure to address previous warnings and apply for separate registration for the girls' provision has raised concerns about its commitment to following regulations. Megan Manson of the National Secular Society emphasized the gravity of the situation, stating, quote, religious beliefs cannot excuse sex discrimination. If this school continues to put its religious dogma before the law and the welfare of its pupils, it must be shut down. This case highlights the ongoing tension between religious practices and educational standards in some faith schools in the UK. So, let me give an overview of what was going on here because I actually went and read the Ofsted report about this school. So here's my understanding. There is this independent Islamic school in this town, and they have to do reviews to make sure that this independent school is operating to educational standards. A- And this school is registered as being co-ed for boys and girls between the ages of 4 to 16. Now, what the investigators found is that they are not they are not allowing these to join the school after the age of 11 and basically tacitly operating a single sex school from the ages of 16 to 11, excuse me, 11 to 16. So all of a sudden from 11 to 16, it's suddenly only girls education and boys cannot continue education. And so they're unlawfully doing this within the same registered school. Meanwhile,
Mhm.
the school is saying, "Oh, well, we're going to apply to have a separate school that is only single sex education between these ages." But then Ofsted went and looked back and they're like, "You have never applied. You've never applied
Mhm.
to open up a separate school for only girls between these ages." So to that end, they have decided that this amounts to unlawful discrimination and are depriving girls the opportunity to be with boys of the same age range. And so you might ask, okay, well, what's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. Based on the report that I read, it seemed like, oh, the school is going to be working, the offset is going to be working with the school to make sure that they come up to regulatory standards because right now many those standards are unmet. So it doesn't seem like they're going to be facing any punishment or anything. It's like, oh, well, they're going to be working with them to make sure that they come up to code. Um, at what point of how many times they have to violate this or whatever that it suddenly becomes too much? I don't know. I don't know how these regulations and stuff work, but this isn't the first time that these kinds of instances have happened in Islamic schools in the UK. And in fact, it was um the court case back in the day that established that this is unlawful discrimination was a case dealing with an Islamic school in the United Kingdom. That's my understanding. So that's the background on this.
If this should be an opportunity, I don't. Unfortunately, UK government is such a coward, but this would have been such a great opportunity instead of like a problem to just shut these schools down as soon as you see any hint of segregation. Like this should be a this is a blessing that these schools want to segregate children, because this will weapon, if we had actually a government that was taking care of the values of the UK, this would be the best way to shut down Islamic schools, because it's one of their weaknesses. They cannot tolerate boys and girls mixing with each other. So you could make it mandatory for boys and girls to be mixing with each other, and also making it for social skills, and to make sure boys and girls um, have recognize each other as fellow human beings, and have a history in their childhood of the communicating with each other. Because let's be fair, if boys and girls are separated from each other in elementary school and high school, that is going to make them a lot less socially equipped to deal with the society that they are going to be working in, and networking with other people, and just being a healthy citizen. So you
I don't know if
should,
I
as a
completely agree
country,
with
if
that.
you I agree with that. Let me finish though. That is completely true. That is completely true. Boys need to see girls. Girls need to see boys in school. They need to be learn how to communicate with each other. A lot of the a lot of the reasons why some boys in some countries are not just awkward with boys, but also have very unhealthy views with girls, and a
Predatory.
lot of the actions that boys predatory actions that boys have against girls is because of this alienation, is because of the separation. But I think with that mindset, with the understanding that this is required for boys and girls to have a healthy childhood development, you should be making it mandatory. You should have no boys school, no girls school. All schools should be mixed, and any school with the smallest hint of even attempting to separate boys and girls should be immediately shut down. This will be one of the most effective ways to shut down any organization that is spreading the virus of Islam. Because remember, your problem is internal. You cannot just close your borders and think that Islam is not going to spread. Islam is going to spread internally through these Islamic schools and organizations, and you should have laws that you could use to shut them down immediately. If you have the standard that either you mix boys and girls or your school is shut down, then you will be able to, with that law, you will be able to get rid of almost all Islamic schools. But yeah, go on.
I don't know. I am not completely against single sex education. I went to an
I
all
know.
school for a large portion of, not a large portion, like 4 years of my education. I thought it was very beneficial. There are lots of studies that show how single sex education can be of particular benefit to girls because they are receiving individualized attention in the school place. They are in an environment where they are not going to be receiving like a lack of attention on certain subjects on gender biased assumptions of their capability, like for example boys getting more attention in math classes or something like that. And it also provides a learning environment where they can just be more individualized and self-exploratory, instead of being in an environment where they're like constantly monitoring how they are around the opposite sex, which is something that I directly experienced. And I think that was of a massive benefit to me. And I noticed how that influenced my life in comparison to my peers that went to co ed schools during certain periods of their development. Um, so I think there are a lot of benefits, particularly for girls, to be in sex segregated schools in certain circumstances. Now, do I think that this is necessarily that correct circumstance? Maybe not, because let's be clear, this needs to be a circumstance where the reason why there is sex segregation is to provide the most rigorous, best, most competitive education to that girl child, not a kind of environment where it's like we're going to be discouraging girls to be as intellectually rigorous as possible. Instead, we're going to be in an environment where we're encouraging girls to just be homemakers and teach them their place and that kind of thing. That's the opposite of what I'm looking for. But I'm just saying there are circumstances where it can actually promote the most intellectual, the most rigorous, in tough, in the best learning environment for girls in certain circumstances. I think that's okay to acknowledge.
Okay, I disagree with that, but I don't want to get into too much. Let me just tell you, I think that ha- be- in school having gender bias, there is gender bias in school, but trying to address that gender bias by having all girls schools is replacing one problem with another problem. You would get rid of the
Mhm.
gender bias issue, and those studies, I've seen those studies that notice the benefit, they're looking in a vacuum. They're only they're only tracking the gender bias issue, and they're noticing that goes away, but they're not tracking the other problems that are added to it. Okay, the gender bias problem should be addressed by removing the gender bias in schools rather than ignoring the problem, like trying to create an environment where there cannot be a gender bias, because isolating girls in an environment where there's no boys makes girls less safe, and it also makes women less equipped to deal in a world that men are, you know, in charge of many things. Women have to know that how to deal with men. Girls have to learn if you want to eventually get rid of that gender bias, women have to be equipped with the skills on how to negotiate, talk to, challenge, and defeat women and other men. If they're not growing up with men, that is a skill that a lot of them are not going to have. But
I don't
also,
know if they're being taught that in co-ed situations, to be fair.
it, it's not about, let me make my point, it's not about teaching them by your teachers. This is something that a lot of things that you learn in school is not actually taught. A lot of the things that you learn in school is just by being around other kids without anybody actively teaching you. You know,
Sure.
teamwork, cooperation. A lot of the things that you learn in school, you learn it through in playtime, not in the class, right? A lot of the things that you learn in school is when you are bullied or when you see somebody being bullied. These are not things that, or somebody being unfair to you or somebody speaking about behind your back. These situations that you're in is not something that the teachers are teaching you, but you're learning them because you're in an environment that you're constantly networking, you're constantly negotiating, you're constantly being challenged or challenging other people. That's something that school teaches you without any teacher actually teaching you. But also, girls would be less safe because if boys are not constantly networking and talking to other girls, then their relationship with girls is going to be very, very unhealthy. And if the relationship of boys with girls is unhealthy, that's a society where girls are going to be less safe. Again, so I acknowledge that the gender bias, but the solution is to address the gender bias in schools that boys and girls are fixed. That problem has better solutions. That's what I think.
I mean, I see your point. I see your point. Um, I don't know. I just feel like, eh, again, I'm biased because of my own experience, right? I think that when I was made to go to a single sex school. I didn't want to, but my parents made
Same
me.
as
And
I
I
was. Me too.
but that was governmental, right? And you're on, wasn't the government that segregates education?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm saying we're
That's different.
both me and you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that's different, but I'm just saying both me and you. Like I could show you a lot of the things that I learned in school that it was amazing, and I could like again. The reason why I'm saying that you referring to yourself is not a very. I mean, we could have any practice, any methodology, and we could find good examples and bad examples of people that had good experience with it and bad
Oh,
experience with it. But the sample size of one is not a very good way
no,
of
no, 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 no,
evaluating
no, no,
whether
no,
the
no. Let me be
yeah,
completely clear. I am not
yeah.
using myself as evidence at all. I'm not using myself
Mhm.
as anecdotal evidence. I'm merely identifying that I have a bias because of my positive personal experience. That's
Okay,
all I'm doing.
I understand. You're
Um,
acknowledging your bias, so that makes a
yeah,
lot of sense.
I'm like, I had a positive experience. I think it was worthwhile. I think that it was a great benefit to my life, but like that's and so I'm just acknowledging that, and that's why it's influencing my opinion. That's all I'm saying. Regardless of that circumstance in those things that I think might cause a personally beneficial environment, doing it this way as what's happening in this school is illegal and not one of those circumstances.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes,
this is
yes, yes,
not that positive
yes.
environment.
Right, right.
So I don't want people to think that I'm like excusing this thing. I just like, maybe it's not necessarily bad in all circumstances, but this is not one of those.
Mhm. Okay.
I don't know
Um,
if the government is gonna do anything about it. They, like, don't shut down the Islamist charities that are
ah,
inciting anti-Semitic hatred. They don't shut down the charities that are bringing in TLP politicians to be inciting violence against blasphemers. Like, they
yeah,
let these charities continue to operate again, and they, like, know it, and it's reported, and they do it again and again and again. Technically, I know the Charity Commission is a different branch of the government, but it doesn't lead you to, like,
yes,
a hopeful sense that they're gonna be
yeah.
taking
I
appropriate action.
Guys, make me the government of the UK. I will just be like, yes, this is so great. I'm so glad that you guys can't not separate boys and girls. Like you have to separate them. This is great. Now I have an excuse to shut all of you down. Thank you for having this weakness. I would be shutting down you first, and then if I made a mistake, then you go through the legal system and complaining about it. This is I would be shutting down every Islamic school with the assumption that you want to segregate boys and girls, and then you could come fight me in the legal system. That's what I would do.
No, okay, but here's the thing, okay, because a lot of whether people wanna, because I went to a Catholic all-girls school, right? So kind of a subtext of the Catholic all-girls school experience is, like, you shouldn't be around boys that much because sex. So but the problem is that, especially in a certain age range, you're coming into puberty, you're coming into yourself. The human sexual interest cannot be repressed. So a lot of girls become interested in other girls. This is like it's a stereotype about Catholic girls' schools that was in my experience had a grain of truth to it. It's like the Catholic I don't know, in American culture, it's such a joke that the Catholic schoolgirls are like lesbians, you know, and I'm like, there was a lot of girls dating girls. Now, the funny thing is from my experience, Harmon, and I don't know if you have any insight into this, is that I have had friends tell me who were boys going through sex segregated education, there was a lot of gay stuff going on in the all
Mm.
boys
Yeah,
schools. Similar to how the girls were going at it at Catholic girls' school, I heard that there was a lot of gay stuff going on in the Islamic boys' schools. Have you heard any? And this is what people are telling me.
yeah. Even in our elementary school, there were sometimes kids would get caught, but they would go into the washroom, they would close the door, and they would get caught. They would get sent home. It was like really, it was an issue, yeah, in our school. I mean, it was an issue for the school. I remember this in elementary school, that was the case. I remember in high school, that was the case. Surprisingly, nothing in guidance school, but I remember, and I remember that specific kid that got caught doing something like that in the washroom to another kid. He actually, a few years later, died from cancer. Which I remember that. I remember that boy specifically. Yeah,
Whoa. Okay.
yeah,
So that being said, we can promote because we have to promote sex segregation to avoid any temptation between men and women. And I'm saying that's not going to be good enough.
yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah, yeah. I don't understand why people are saying we should separate. Like somebody in the live chat is like, no, Armin, we should separate them. Like Armin, if you don't segregate it, it's a distraction. They will have sex. Okay, great. I mean, what are you talking about? High school? Like they should have sex. They're at the age to have sex. What are you talking about? Are you talking about what? Like, oh, it's a distraction. They will have sex. Well, if they want to have sex, maybe they should be having sex. The problem is not the sex. The problem is whether or not they're having protect. You know, they're doing it the right way. They're doing it. They're using protection. They're doing the right thing to make sure. In fact, the problem is that the people who want to avoid high schoolers having sex, they're not, whether or not they're mixed or not, they're going to have sex because they're going to find ways to have sex anyways, either with boys with each other, girls with each other, boys and girls outside of school. In fact, they will boys not being next to girls is going to make them try to seek sex somewhere else, and you made them so unhealthy and so sexually
Repressed.
what is it called, depressed, that when they go and try to satisfy their sexual desires, it's more likely for them to have to do something that is harmful to girls their age. So you shouldn't try to avoid them, stop them from having sex, because they are going to have sex one way or another. Like teenagers are going to have sex one way or another. In fact, by not controlling it, you are going to be more likely to make it the type of sex that is not going to spread disease or harmful to either one of the people
Yeah.
participating in the sex. Yeah.
There is so much evidence that abstinence only sex education is not effective. It's not effective in preventing teen pregnancies. It's not effective in preventing the spread of disease. Just teach people how to use a goddamn condom, okay? Um,
Yeah.
and then Dwight Jones is saying better for boys and girls to be doing it than boy or on boy or girl on girl, Susie. Well,
Why?
why? Because then and then
Why?
wait, and then
Why?
Dwight was also complaining about teen pregnancy. Armin, you don't want teenage pregnancy. Well, a good way to avoid teenage pregnancy is same-sex interaction. So what do you mean
Yes,
it's better? Huh? I'm sensing an
but
inconsistency.
also if you
You want
don't,
to stop pregnancy? Become a
also
lesbian.
yeah, if you want to, and also if you want to stop teen pregnancy, is by not telling them that they shouldn't be having sex. Telling teenagers not to have sex is the best way to get more teens pregnant. Because if you don't make it a taboo, if you make it normal, then it's more likely that you will be able to promote the ways to have sex that will get less girls pregnant. If you try to make it a taboo, then they are going to do it anyways, and then you have lost them and you cannot actually promote safe ways to have sex. Also, I agree that boy boy sex and girl girl sex is bad if the reason why they're having same sex is because not because they're actually gay, is because they have been so deprived of sex with like these are sometimes straight boys and straight girls end up having, this is a result of, it might be something, it's kind of like having sex in prison. I don't know, actually this might actually be wrong.
Wait, what?
No, like sometimes I think like boys and boys are having sex with each other not because they're gay, but because they are so sexually frustrated and they
Yeah.
have no other outlet, and that's why they're having sex with other boys, not because they're gay. I don't know if
Oh yeah.
that's the case, or but if that's why we're having boy boy sex, like I support boys having sex with boys because that's what they want to do. But if boys are having sex
Boys
with other boys,
being boys.
no, this is serious, Susie. If this is actually very serious when it comes to sexual health. If you should not be in favor of men having sex with other men, if the reason behind that is such a level of sexual frustration that they're just that just shows a level of frustration that is not healthy.
Mhm.
You know?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my god, one time I went down a wormhole of finding people that, took screenshots of, like, green text posts on 4chan, and there's a whole wormhole where you can go down of, like, 4chan incels talking about how they just downloaded Grindr just to get their dick sucked. Like, it's
Yeah.
wild. It's wild. It's a
Yeah.
whole there's that's a whole wormhole. That's a whole different discussion, but that is a thing. Even outside of prison or a boys' school. Um, okay, so a few people were commenting on this. Erican was saying we actually did that in Turkey in the mid 30s for primary schools and higher education in early 90s in secondary schools. Okay.
Separation. He was. Yeah.
Yeah. David the Goliath saying, I had experience as a teen, which I feel now would be 100% gay, but at the time I thought it was straight, like comparing the sizes of each other's D. That's not necessarily gay. I mean, are we
Yeah,
talking flaccid or erect? What
it's only gay if, I mean, it's not wrong if it's gay, but it's not gay if you were just, if you're not in, like if you were sexually aroused by that experience, that would make it gay, which is okay
Mhm.
if you were. But if you were not sexually aroused by that experience, it's not gay.
I don't know I think it's probably perfectly normal to be curious about comparing your D size with someone else. If I had a D,
Yeah.
I would probably be curious. I'd be curious. I'd be curious, but the
I
question
mean, you
is
don't have to compare.
hard or soft?
There's averages online and everything. If you're trying to compare because this is an excuse for a sexual experience,
Yeah,
then I
yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Boys being boys.
What is that?
I'm making a reference to one of my favorite YouTubers, and if anyone knows who that is, say so in the live chat or
Yeah.
comment.
Troll is saying, "Don't
Drew
forget bisexuals in front of Susie." Yeah, I mean, yes. When we're saying, okay, never mind. Yes,
uh
fine. Oh, sorry.
Drew Traver gave a super chat saying Daniel Hikikachu would have some time figuring out this school sex stuff. Bye bye Islam. Bye bye Daniel Hikikachu. I don't
Yeah.
understand this because he would support sex segregation.
Yes.
Um, Sid
I
Dave
think he
is
says
saying,
he wouldn't answer.
use condom, folks, always with no exceptions and trust no one unless tested. There is something called PrEP, which protects from HIV. Thank you to Sid Dave to promoting some safe sex practices. Good
Well,
on
not
you.
not. What do you mean no exceptions? What if you're in a long-term relationship with a person that you are monogamous with, and you are already both aware of each other's health issues? So no,
Yeah,
don't
then at
always
that
use
point, you
condoms.
would be tested, and then you know, then it's
But that would
established, and then you
that
can
would
move forward.
yeah. What if you're trying to get your wife pregnant, Sid? Then always use condoms
Oh my
without
god.
exceptions. I'm just kidding.
Unless
He
tested.
said, "Oh, okay." But
And
that's a contradiction.
honestly,
It says
even if
no.
you are in a long-term monogamous relationship, you should still get tested because there's so many stories of people's spouses cheating on them and giving them a disease, and that's how they find out. So you should keep getting
Okay, fine.
tested anyways.
He said unless tested, but that contradicts no exceptions. That's a
Oh, you're being a
self-contradiction.
stickler. You should Everyone should keep on getting tested. That's my belief.
Hmm.
Um, Gasian American gives super chat saying, aside from religion, are there other differences between Islamic madrasas and Catholic schools? Aside from the religion, are there other differences between the Islamic madrasas and Catholic schools?
Whoa.
I mean, that's very
The
broad. I
girl
mean, they probably have different routines, like maybe different standards of education. Like, shoot, I don't know.
did they make you go pray 5 times or 3 times a day in Catholic school? Probably not.
No, we had to wear little plaid uniforms.
Hmm.
Do they wear plaid uniforms?
And you know what? They didn't let me in girls' schools when I was in Iran, as much as I wanted to go inside one. In fact, I think I thought about being able to go inside one way too many times when I was a teenager, actually.
I see that for you.
So
I
I don't know
believe you.
what's yeah, yeah. I don't know what's going on there in girls' schools in Iran, but yeah, I wish they would let me in. I remember that.
It remains a mystery to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a
Uh,
huge problem for me because I was going through puberty, right? I was very, very horny. And whenever I walked to school, there's a girls' school on my way. So while I'm walking to school, all the girls are trying to get into their school. I have to walk through them, right? And I was Islamically minded and horny at the same time. And every single day, I had to walk through all these girls to get to my school. It was a huge challenge. It
I
was
see where
very
this is
difficult.
going.
Yes.
Were you tempted?
Oh yeah, I had. I
Did you
mean,
have to go ask for
I
forgiveness
thought
afterwards?
I did have to. I was constantly thinking like I'm failing Allah. It was very difficult. Yes.
The little authoritarian in your brain can see what you're thinking, Armin.
Yes.
Leora gave a super chat saying, I agree boys and girls should learn to deal with each other on a social level. I went to girls only in public as well as private. Public school you understand the opposite sex.
Mhm.
Yeah, so kind of agreeing more with Armin. Um, and Sid Dave gave a super chat saying most homophobes have no problem with lesbian bi women because it fits their threesome fantasies. It is the gay men which freaks these people out. Yeah, that's true. Well, and then also the transgender issue, nominally speaking. And the issue is basically it comes down to a disgust factor versus the other thing they find sexual and titillating. So then that's acceptable. And then the other one, they have a visceral disgust factor too.
Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do! And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.